The 11th round of the 2008 IndyCar Series season took place at one of the strangest ovals in American racing, Nashville Superspeedway. It was also set to be the 8th IndyCar race at the track. One of the biggest storylines entering the weekend was a crack dominance of Scott Dixon, who while still in the championship lead was off the back of a disastrous race at Watkins Glen. Another story was the absence of EJ Vizo, who had caught a case of the mumps. Come race day, however, bad weather was the biggest topic of discussion. Rain was on the way, pushing the start of the race much earlier than scheduled. This was bad news for Marco Andretti, who had actually started the day at the American Le Mans Series race at Lime Rock Park up in Connecticut. He would get to the track on time, however, starting the race from the 11th spot on the grid. Your top 6 starters would be Helio Castroneves on the pole, Danica Patrick alongside, Hideki Muto, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Scott Dixon, and Dan Weldon. AJ Foyt IV would be your last place starter. As the cars fired, there was trouble for 18th place starter Darren Manning, whose in-car hydraulic jack system failed. Although it didn't take him out of the race, the AJ Foyt team had a challenging night ahead. With all the pre-race stories out of the way, we can get to the start of the race. The field got single file almost immediately, with Helio Castroneves maintaining the lead. It was a uniform start overall, with the field staying single file, but as quickly as we got things going, there was trouble in the mid-pack. It was Marco Andretti and Ryan Briscoe in trouble in turn 1, with Marco's car destroyed and Briscoe with damage. The two were going side by side through 1 when Marco lost control and drifted up into Briscoe. Although Briscoe was able to drive the car back to the pits, he would be out of the race along with Marco. Besides Enrique Bernoldi picking up some damage, nobody else was collected. We'd get the race restarted on lap 11, with Helio in first, Danica in second, and Scott Dixon in third. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing, as Dixon suspected that he had a gearbox issue. However, the team reported back that everything looked good on the data. As the race developed, it became pretty obvious that everyone was treating this race as a sprint, with the drivers and the teams trying to stretch the first stint all the way to lap 60. This was certainly bad news for Helio, but what also alarmed him was Danica starting to catch up to him. Danica went for the move on lap 44, but after Helio slammed the door on her, she began to fall through the field. 8 laps later, Scott Dixon went for the lead, but this time the move worked. As Helio lost momentum, he fell through the running order, creating a few stack-ups as well. On lap 57, Danica came into the pits, starting the first round of pit stops. After Scott Dixon came in, it was now Oriol Servia in the lead. He had taken fuel during the early yellow, and wouldn't pit until lap 68. When he did come into the pits stop was very slow for Servia, about 20 seconds to be exact. It was a stuck wheel gun that made the pit stop slow, but it's unclear what tire exactly was stuck. Pit reporter Vince Welch said it was the outside right tire, whatever the that means. After all the drivers came in, it was Scott Dixon in the lead still. However, after Will Power acted as a rolling roadblock, holding up Dixon and nearly hitting Tony Kanaan second, the front pack fight started to heat up. Kanaan would get the move done, grabbing the lead during a commercial break. A short while after this, the second yellow came out after Ryan Hunter-Reay hit the outside wall on lap 98, taking him out of the race. During the yellow flag, the race became official with the drivers passing the halfway mark. There was also a round of pit stops with a running order remaining pretty much the same as it was before. We'd get the race restarted on lap 110, with Tony Kanaan, Scott Dixon, and Danica Patrick making up your top 3. As the laps ticked down and the rain closed in on the track, it was a question of when the rain would come, not if. The biggest worry though was the lightning. It wouldn't have to spit a drop of rain, just one lightning strike could end the race early. With 62 laps to go, the rain came around and the yellow flag came out. As soon as the yellow came out, people started to leave the grandstands and Marty Reed basically handed the trophy to Tony Kanaan. But it wasn't a downpour, just a sprinkle. It was enough to bring the yellow out, but not enough to end the race. The field trundled along under yellow, and eventually the pits opened up. Tony Kanaan would pit from the lead, praying that the race would go to the end. For Dixon and the other cars that stayed out, the magic lap for them was around the lap 175 mark. If they reached that, they would have to pit no matter what. There was still rain on the radar though, so while Scott Dixon was hoping for rain, Kanaan was hoping for the opposite. The green flag would fly again on lap 151, with Scott Dixon in the lead, Dan Weldon in second, Tony Kanaan third, and 2 lapped cars between Weldon and Kanaan. The restart was incredibly hectic, and the 14 laps of green that followed were filled with hard racing and close calls. Dixon was still in the lead when after 14 laps, the yellow came out again. The rain was back, but just another drizzle, briefly. The drizzle soon became heavier rain, and by lap 171 the red flag came out. Early in the red flag, there was a trace amount of optimism that we could get the race restarted, but as the rain got heavier, that washed away. The covers were put on the cars, the drivers hopped out, and 15 minutes later, the race was declared official. Scott Dixon would score his 3rd win in a row at Nashville, getting his 4th win of the 2008 season in the process. Dan Weldon would be classed in 2nd, and Helio Castroneves would be in 3rd. A few weeks after this race, the 2009 IndyCar schedule would be released, with Nashville being taken off the schedule after an 8-year run with the IndyCars. It was an event cancellation that partially led to the track's closure only a few years later. This race wasn't that good, to be honest, but the strategy content was very interesting. It was like watching a speed skating event at the Winter Olympics, as even with the added pressure of looming rain, there were only 2 on-track passes for the lead all day, only one of which ABC caught live. Without the strategy content, the rain, and the fact this was the last ever IndyCar race at the track, it would have been a very forgettable race. Thank you all for watching, and have a great afternoon.